Scorpio, beloved soul of transformation, this is the moment you've been sensing. No more whispers, no more signs that only half make sense. The universe is speaking clearly now. The change you've avoided, feared, or postponed is no longer a future event. It is now. The end of this month brings a turning point you cannot ignore. And yes, it may feel heartbreaking, but it's sacred. It's time to leave. You didn't arrive at this video by chance. You were called. When divine timing intersects with spiritual readiness, messages like this find their way to you. And the message is this: where you've been is no longer aligned with where your soul is destined to go. Whether it's a relationship, a role, a routine, or a version of yourself, it's time to walk away. Not because you failed, but because you outgrew it. Here at Miracle of the Sign, we welcome you into a sacred space where cosmic truth, intuitive guidance, and the healing word of God come together to hold you, guide you, and remind you that you're never walking alone. The fact that you're listening now tells me something powerful. Your soul is awakening to its next assignment. You've been strong for so long, Scorpio. Carrying burdens you didn't speak of. Loving through silence. Enduring through uncertainty. But now, a divine shift is unfolding. Placed at the threshold of endings and beginnings, you are being asked to do the bravest thing of all: surrender. Trust what you cannot see. Trust that the pain of release is the opening of a spiritual gate. As it's written in Hebrews 10 verse 38, the just shall live by faith, not by sight. Right now, your faith is the bridge between what was and what can be. You don't need a detailed plan, just a willing heart. A quiet yes. A small step in a direction you cannot fully name yet. And I know, it hurts. Change often does. But understand this: what's ending isn't punishing you. It's freeing you. You've done all you could. You loved, you tried, you waited. But now, God is redirecting you. Not away from something towards something greater. So before we go any further, I invite you to pause and affirm your presence. Write this in the comments, not just from a but for you. Write, I am ready to walk away from what no longer serves my soul. Let it be a spiritual contract. A moment of truth. A declaration of self-love and courage. And allow me to take a sacred moment to thank you truly for being here. For every comment, every like, every moment you choose to subscribe and walk this journey with us, you become more than a viewer. You become part of a family. You help keep this light alive. You help send this message to others who, like you, are standing at the edge of something deeply personal, deeply holy. So stay with me until the very end, Scorpio. Because what the universe is about to reveal may shift not only how you see your current reality but how you rise into your next one. Scorpio, when the universe no longer whispers but begins to speak in unmistakable ways, it's not to alarm you but to awaken you. You are entering a cosmic moment when the call to release, to walk away, is not subtle. It comes with the tension of Pluto, the ruler of your sign, clashing with Venus and the dark feminine of Lilith. This isn't a mere planetary alignment. It's a spiritual confrontation between what you've learned to value and the raw truth of what your soul can no longer carry. That inner discomfort you've been feeling? It isn't random. It's a pressure rising not to punish, but to purify. Because something inside you knows, The version of yourself that learned to survive in a certain story is no longer the one who will thrive in the story ahead. And yet, knowing this doesn't make it easier to let go. We often hold on, not out of love, but out of fear of emptiness, fear of lack, fear of becoming invisible if we're no longer needed in the roles we've exhausted ourselves playing. But I want you to see this moment not as a breakdown, but as a breaking open. You are not collapsing, you are unfolding. You are shedding not because you're lost, but because you're remembering. And that is what Pluto's square to Venus demands, not simply change, but the courage to confront where your values have been inherited instead of chosen, where your commitments have become contracts of emotional debt, not soul agreements of growth. Think about the job that has outlived your joy, yet still claims your energy. Or the relationship where love became performance. Or the part of you that smiles on the outside while privately negotiating daily with exhaustion, emptiness, or quiet resentment. These are not signs of weakness. They are soul signals, indicators that you are evolving. And evolution, by nature, is disruptive. It strips before it reveals. It removes before it renews. But here's the deeper truth: you are not being asked to abandon yourself. You are being asked to come home to yourself. This is where the wisdom of sacred scripture meets cosmic truth. The just shall live by faith, not by sight. Hebrews 10 verse 38. That verse isn't simply about religion. It's about reality. It speaks to every moment when we are called to step forward without evidence, without applause, and sometimes without clarity. Faith is not passive. It is a practice. A living, breathing courage that doesn't wait for confirmation, it moves because it trusts what it hears within. So when you choose to release something today, you are not simply walking away. You are declaring that your spirit will no longer compromise with limitation. You are proclaiming that fear will not decide your future. And this act, this momentous, in itself, a prayer. It is your offering. It is your permission to the universe to co-create something that aligns with who you're becoming, not who you've been. This is the intersection where cosmic alignment meets soul accountability. Where you no longer wait for external validation to choose internal freedom. It's not easy. No sacred thing ever is. But you were made for transformation, Scorpio. Not because you like change, but because you are change. You are the alchemy the world is afraid of and the healing it needs. So ask yourself gently, without judgment, what would shift in my life if I no longer served what drains me? What could rise within me if I allowed myself to walk away? This isn't the end. It's the beginning of the version of you that no longer asks for permission to exist in wholeness. And it starts with one brave step out of the room that's burning, and into the future that's calling your name. Scorpio, endings have a way of echoing through your heart louder than most signs. You feel things not just deeply but completely. And when a connection begins to fray, when the thread that once tethered you to someone begins to unravel, it doesn't just tug on your emotions, it tugs on your soul. But the truth that's rising for you now is not a punishment. It's a passage. The presence of both the Eight of Cups and the world in your energetic field is profound. These cards are not just signals of loss. They are sacred markers of evolution. The Eight of Cups asks you to leave behind what no longer fills your cup, not out of bitterness, but because your thirst for growth has outgrown the well. And the world, in turn, signals completion. A soul contract is fulfilled. A karmic cycle is closing. The chapter has served its purpose. And while it may be hard to walk away from someone who once felt like home, the truth is this: you are not being cast out. You are being set free. There's a quiet kind of courage in choosing not to chase what's drifting away. It's the courage of someone who has finally understood that love isn't about holding on, it's about allowing. Allowing what's real to stay, and what's expired to dissolve. That shift in you, Scorpio, that subtle yet seismic realization is not weakness. It's wisdom. Something in you has matured. Your energy has changed frequencies. And the people who were once in harmony with your song may no longer hear the same melody. That doesn't make them wrong or unworthy. It simply means your rhythm has moved on. Let's pause for a moment and talk about the part of you that finds this the hardest. The inner child. The part of you that learned, long ago, that losing people meant being unsafe. That if you let go, you would be left behind. That if you didn't fight to be loved, you'd be invisible. That little one still lives in you, whispering, "Don't leave me alone again." But today, your grown, wise, sacred self can gently respond, "You are not alone anymore. I am here. I will not let you cling to what is hurting you. I will not abandon you by keeping you in places your soul has outgrown." There is healing in that. There is deep, cellular healing in choosing to love yourself enough to walk away from what is fading. And no, the silence after someone leaves isn't empty. It's space. Space where something honest can enter. Space for peace. Space for joy that doesn't have to be earned. Space where no one expects you to shrink so they can shine. You haven't been left behind, Scorpio. You've been moved forward. Moved to the next level of your spiritual unfolding. And what may feel like loss right now is actually the sacred clearing required for alignment. That ache in your chest is not just grief, it's expansion. It's your heart cracking open so something truer can grow. So take a moment. Place your hand on your chest. Breathe deeply. And ask yourself, have I been holding on out of fear or out of love? If it's fear, release it. Let it go, not as an act of goodbye but as an act of rebirth. There is a love waiting for you that does not ask you to perform. There is a relationship forming, maybe with another, maybe with yourself, that honors your truth rather than your mask. But first, the old must make room for the new. Let this be the season you stop apologizing for what you need. Let this be the moment you become the one who stays. For you. If this speaks to you, let it land. And when you're ready, share in the comments, "I've held on before out of fear. But now, I'm ready to let go with love." Because saying it out loud isn't weakness, it's the very beginning of freedom. Scorpio, there's a distinct moment in a soul's evolution when something that once felt secure begins to feel suffocating. You may not have the full clarity yet, but you can feel the edges of your current reality tightening. What used to bring you a sense of stability, perhaps a long-held position, a familiar career path, or a safe but stagnant environment, is now quietly draining your spirit. And that's not failure. That's alignment calling. When the Ace of Pentacles arrives in your field, it doesn't just bring a message of material opportunity. It carries the vibration of divine redirection and invitation into a new form of abundance that matches who you're becoming, not who you've been. But here's the paradox. This card often appears not when things are comfortable, but when things are coming undone. Its arrival marks a beginning, yes, but one that's only made possible by the ending you might still be resisting. There's wisdom in the discomfort you're feeling. That uneasiness is your inner knowing trying to get your attention. Maybe your job no longer reflects your values. Maybe the career that once gave you pride now demands too much of your peace. Or maybe, life is simply nudging you somewhere else through changes that don't seem like choices, but feel more like pushes. Layoffs. Restructures. A sudden internal disinterest that you can't explain. These aren't punishments. They're part of a larger realignment that your soul already agreed to, long before your mind caught up. In numerology, the number 9 symbolizes completion. Not failure, not abandonment, completion. The fulfillment of a cycle. When paired with the angel number 919, there's an added layer of spiritual movement. Not just the closing of one chapter, but the blessed emergence of the next, with guidance all along the way. You're not walking out into the unknown unprepared. You're being escorted into a season where your skills, your integrity, and your capacity to serve with purpose are finally matched with opportunities that nourish you in return. Think of it this way: every job, every role, every business venture is like a garden plot. Some seasons, you plant. Others, you harvest. But eventually, the soil grows tired if you never rotate the crop. Staying in the same place for too long, even if it once thrived, can deplete what was once fruitful. And just because you once belonged there doesn't mean you still do. Your spirit is asking for fresh ground. Your energy is ready for a new assignment. So the real question isn't, what will happen if I leave? The real question is, what might blossom if I finally do? If all resources were provided, if support wasn't a question, what would you dare to create? What would you say yes to, if you knew you wouldn't fall? This is the shift the universe is orchestrating now, not a forced departure, but a sacred graduation. And while you may not see the full map yet, you don't need to. You only need to take the first step. And often, that step looks like one word: no. No to the role that asks you to shrink. No to the hustle that depletes you. No to the paycheck that costs your peace. Because when you say no to what no longer serves your evolution, you say yes to something deeper, your soul's calling. You create space for an opportunity that doesn't just reward your effort, but reflects your worth. So pause here, and feel into it. If you were fully supported financially, emotionally, spiritually, what would you begin? Let that answer rise, unfiltered. That's where your new life begins. And the Ace of Pentacles? That's your permission slip to believe it's real. Healing is never loud, Scorpio. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or applause. It begins in the quietest corners of your heart, the ones that once whispered, "I'm not enough unless someone chooses me." And now, at this moment in your soul's journey, you are being gently called back to a truth deeper than anything another person could ever offer. You are already whole. The transformation you're stepping into isn't just external career, direction, even spiritual path. It is the inner revolution of remembering that you don't need to be rescued. You're not waiting for someone to complete you. You are becoming the safe place you always longed for. In the energy of this season, self-love is no longer a concept, it is a commitment. The way you've recently chosen to take care of your body, to say no without guilt, to let your emotions rise without shutting them down, these are sacred acts. Small, perhaps, to the outside world. But energetically, they are seismic. They're signaling to the universe that you are no longer negotiating your worth for connection. You are no longer asking, "How little of me do I need to be so someone stays?" You're choosing to stay with yourself. And that choice changes everything. Relationships are mirrors. They don't give us worth, they reflect the relationship we already have with ourselves. So if something new is entering your life, a person, a partnership, a deepening of intimacy, trust that it will only meet you at the level of self-regard you've allowed yourself to build. This is not about perfection. This is about alignment. When you choose to honor your emotions, when you choose to validate your own dreams, when you stop shrinking to keep someone comfortable, you begin to magnetize love that sees you clearly and doesn't ask you to dim. Your journey back to yourself may have been sparked by disappointment, grief, or disconnection. But now it's becoming a path of devotion. You are no longer chasing peace, you are becoming it. You are no longer waiting to feel safe in someone else's arms, you are learning to be held by your own. And this isn't isolation. This is integration. This is how wholeness is formed, not by finding someone to fill the gap, but by becoming the one who no longer abandons themselves at the first sign of emptiness. So ask yourself with tenderness, without judgment, what have I done recently that proves I am listening to myself? What choice did I make that came from love, not fear? What boundary did I hold? What need did I meet without apology? Because every time you do that, you rewire something ancient within you. You tell the younger version of yourself, the one who once begged to be seen, "I see you now." And when you become that witness, that guardian of your own inner landscape, you begin to heal in ways no outside relationship could ever replicate. From this place, Scorpio, your light becomes undeniable. Your presence stops being contingent upon acceptance. And the people who approach you will not be those who need you to be small, but those who are ready to meet you in your full expression. This is what self-love looks like, not manicured affirmations or curated perfection, but the quiet, sacred act of staying when it's hard, listening when you're scared, and choosing yourself even when it would be easier to disappear. And when love comes, and it will not arrive to fix you. It will arrive because you no longer believe you are broken. It will meet you, not as a remedy, but as a reflection. Because you have finally remembered, the greatest love you'll ever know begins with the one who never left you yourself. As we come to this moment in your journey, Scorpio, the energy begins to quiet, not because there is less happening, but because you are learning to hear the subtler language of the universe. You are no longer reacting to noise or chaos, but learning to respond to stillness. And in that stillness, something sacred is preparing to meet you. The alignment that has been slowly unfolding throughout this month now concentrates into a point of clarity, asking you to become intentional with your vibration, your direction, and most importantly your energy field. Deep indigo, your guiding color for this time, is not just a shade, it's a frequency. It speaks to the part of your spirit that sees without seeing, hears without sound, and moves not from urgency, but from alignment. It's the hue of intuition, of inner knowing that doesn't ask for proof. Wearing it, visualizing it, surrounding yourself with it during the final days of this month helps regulate your nervous system and invites calm amid uncertainty. Indigo doesn't push you forward. It holds your hand as you move at your own pace, in your own rhythm. This energetic window, specifically between the 27th and 29th, is more than just days on a calendar, it is a sacred passage. The astrology in this window supports the breaking down of false narratives, roles you've outgrown, and agreements your soul never truly signed. It's a time when the universe is not punishing you with endings, but protecting you with redirection. Every delay, every detour, every moment of not yet, is the loving hand of life repositioning you where you truly belong. You may feel, in this space, a strange combination of vulnerability and readiness. That's normal. You are shedding an outdated layer not because it was bad, but because it no longer fits. And in its place, a more authentic you is emerging. But here's the truth no one talks about: transformation can feel lonely. Even when it's right, even when it's beautiful, it can feel like walking through fog with no compass. That's why this phase invites you to deepen your trust not in outcomes, but in your capacity to stay open even when clarity hasn't arrived. Faith, in this context, is not about blind leaps. It's about choosing not to close your heart, even when it hurts. It's about releasing control not out of defeat, but out of respect for a greater order unfolding. It's the decision to show up, one breath at a time, and whisper to yourself, "I'm still here." And that's enough. You are not alone in this. Even when no one else understands the internal shift you're navigating, you are being held by something greater. Call it source, call it purpose, call it the energy that breathes stars into motion. Whatever your name for it, you are supported. And this is your invitation now, as you sit at the edge of a new energetic threshold. What are you willing to release so that something truer can take its place? What thought pattern, identity, relationship, or fear has simply expired in your life? You don't have to burn bridges. But you do have to walk forward. And as you do, know this: what you're stepping into will not require you to betray yourself in order to be loved, chosen, or successful. What's coming will recognize you because it will be built for who you truly are, not who you had to pretend to be. So take a moment, Scorpio, to write it down, not for performance, not for ritual, but for integration. I release, and then finish the sentence. Let it be a declaration to the universe, a signal that you're ready not just to be transformed, but to participate in that transformation with clarity, grace, and devotion. You are not walking alone. You are walking with intention. And everything that matters is already walking toward you. Scorpio, if you've made it to this moment, breathe with me. Slow, deep, honest. You've just journeyed through some of the most intimate truths your soul has been holding, perhaps silently, for far too long. This message wasn't meant to simply inform you, it was meant to awaken you. And if you felt the stir within your chest, that subtle ache of recognition, then you already know, something in you is ready to move. Not because you lost, but because you've outgrown what once kept you small. You are not leaving because you've failed. You are leaving because you've already succeeded in ways your past can't contain anymore. The transformation has already begun. You have seen too much, learned too much, and healed too deeply to stay in spaces that ask you to betray your truth. You are not here to prove your worth by how long you endure. You are here to walk forward because your worth is no longer up for negotiation. Yes, it may hurt. Yes, it might feel like grief. But this ending is not your undoing, it's your realignment. You're not walking away to escape something, you are walking toward the version of you that has been waiting just on the other side of this decision. And that version? She's strong. He's steady. They know what it means to rise. So ask yourself, with tenderness, what are you truly being invited to release? What story, what identity, What weight have you been carrying that was never yours to hold in the first place? What would it feel like to step forward not needing to explain, justify, or prove but simply knowing? It's time. Remember, endings are not punishments. They are sacred transitions. The closed door is not rejection, it's redirection. This season is not about holding on harder. It's about trusting deeper. Trusting that the next space you're walking into won't require you to shrink in order to stay. And now, from this sacred space, I invite you to declare what your spirit already knows. Say it in the comments below, and make it real for yourself and the universe. I'm ready to walk away from what no longer serves my soul. That single sentence, shared with intention, becomes your spiritual yes, your commitment to begin again. Before you go, I want to thank you truly for being here. Your presence matters. Every moment you spent listening, every breath you took to feel instead of flee, is a step toward wholeness. And every like, every comment, every share and subscription helps the energy of this channel ripple outward, bringing healing to others who need it, just like you did. Thank you for being part of the miracle of the sign family. You are not alone on this path. You are seen, guided, and deeply supported. If this message touched something inside you, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Not just to stay connected but to keep the light flowing forward. Because healing doesn't end here. It begins again, every time you say yes to yourself. You are walking into a chapter that reflects who you've become, not who you had to be to survive. And this, Scorpio, is your sacred permission to go not as someone who gave up, but as someone who finally remembered, you were always meant to rise.